So a lot of joy in the room this evening. It says in the Mishnah, who is wise? One who can learn from each individual. And that kind of defines our community as we have great depth here of learning, and we learn from each other. And so every once in a while we have a member of the synagogue teach Torah. Well, it's a great joy when you hear that not a child, a grown-up child of members of the congregation is teaching Torah to his own community in New York. And when we learned that, we said, Lee, you've got to come up here and teach Torah as well. So Lee, if you'll come forward, the son of Jerry and Betty Goldberg, regulars in our midst. We're so glad that you've agreed to teach Torah to our community. It's great to see you here.
Thank you.
And thanks again.
Thank you. Look in your checkbook, the rabbi said. His face felt hot with shame. Sitting next to his parents, guilt. Two parts of him at war with each other. Wasn't this supposed to be over? The shame, the guilt, the hiding? He had returned home where he was supposed to feel safe. Does what you see inside your checkbook represent your values? He felt anything but safe. He felt raw, exposed. What he saw inside his checkbook represented his shame and his guilt, his trading one form of hiding for another, lying to and betraying the people he loved most in the world. In coming out of one closet, he tried to smooth the way with drugs and alcohol, believing they would make the adjustment to his new life easier, making him more comfortable in his own skin. But he had walked into another closet, another place where he was hiding. Two parts of him, still at war with each other. Shabbat Shalom. Return. What does return mean to you? Can we ever really return? Tonight, like Laura, Mike, and Jeremy, I'm returning to the community I grew up in, Temple Beth Elohim, TBE. I'm in the same community, but a different building. TBE is the same, yet different. Later tonight, I'm going to my 20th high school reunion. My classmates will be the same, yet different. Last night, I celebrated Thanksgiving at my cousin's house, the first time I've ever celebrated it anywhere besides my parents. Being with my whole family for Thanksgiving was the same, yet different. And on Wednesday night, I arrived at my parents' new house for the first time. Coming home was the same, yet different. Returning to TBE, returning to my class from Wellesley High School, returning to Thanksgiving dinner, returning home. Each return the same, each return different. Every fall, we return to the beginning of the Torah. It's kind of a strange concept, returning to the beginning. Isn't the beginning where something starts? So how do you return to the beginning? Maybe the Torah is like the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail, or a Mobius strip, and we never really get to the end or the beginning. We just keep going in a perpetual state of return. Earlier this year, my dad asked me if I'd be interested in returning here to TBE to share words of Torah. I said I'd love to, and originally we were looking at a date for the summer. When that didn't work, Rabbi Sherman suggested this Shabbat. And to my surprise, given the lateness in the year, the Parsha was Toldot, a portion I've returned to many times. How fitting for this Thanksgiving weekend of return. 26 years ago, Toldot, Generations, was a Torah portion for my bar mitzvah, wearing this very talit and kippah. Don't ask me what I talked about. Despite my best efforts, I don't remember, and it must not have been particularly memorable because my parents don't either. 3 years ago, I wrote about Toldot in a Shabbat message for the Jewish Federations of North America's National Young Leadership Cabinet, and 2 years ago, I gave a Devar Torah on this portion at my synagogue in New York, Congregation Beit Simchat Torah, CBST. I shared this with Rabbi Sherman, who noted the remarkable coincidence and observed that, in some ways, it's supposed to be that way. That is, we come to the same Torah in different ways all the time. The same, yet different. In Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, the rabbinic sage Ben Bagbag said about the Torah, turn it and turn it, for everything is in it. Reflect on it and grow old and gray with it. Don't turn from it, for nothing is better than it. Turn, return. While I haven't grown old and gray with this Torah portion, I have turned it and returned to it many times, reflecting on how each time Toldot is the same, yet different. Toldot contains perhaps the most well-known familial drama in Genesis, a book full of them, the story of Jacob and Esau. The story begins with Rebekah, who feels her offspring, two parts of herself, at war inside her before they even emerge from her womb. Who learns from God that her offspring, these two parts of herself, will become two nations, with one prevailing over the other, the elder serving the younger. Who seeks to deceive her husband so that the younger, that part of herself that she favors, can receive his father's blessing. As I return to Toldot, I realize that the text never explicitly states why Rebekah seeks to deceive Isaac. It only gets there through a series of implications. While the twins are still in her womb, God tells Rebekah that the elder will serve the younger. After the twins are born, the Torah tells us that Esau, the elder, was a skillful hunter, a man of the outdoors, whereas Jacob, the younger, was a homespun man who kept to the tents. Finally, the Torah tells us that Rebekah favored Jacob. Unlike Esau, who we're told Isaac favored because Esau put game in his mouth, we're never told why Rebekah favored Jacob. But we're given two plausible explanations for why Rebekah favored him. One prophetic, because God said so. One emotional, because Jacob stayed close to home with mom. We're then left to infer that Rebekah sought to deceive Isaac because she favored Jacob, and that her favoritism was based on one or both of these explanations. Before I returned to Toldot, I thought the text was much cleaner than this. I assumed that the text explicitly stated why Rebekah sought to deceive Isaac. In fact, as I began writing this, I thought the text stated that Rebekah sought to deceive Isaac so that Jacob could fulfill his God-given destiny, carrying on the legacy of the Jewish people. But no, Rebekah's motivations are anything but clear, and we are left to ponder not only why she seeks to deceive Isaac, but why she favors Jacob in the first place. Is the explanation prophetic, emotional, both, neither? Why do we favor parts of ourselves over others? What parts of you do you favor? And what parts of you do you disfavor? And how does your favoring or disfavoring those parts cause you to treat yourself? 18 years ago this weekend, I returned home from junior year of college and came out to my parents after Thanksgiving dinner. Up until then, I didn't just disfavor the gay part of myself. I hated it. I didn't feel like there was anyone like me or anyone I could turn to without letting them down. Being who I was meant I was letting myself down. It meant I'd be prevented from accomplishing my life's goals. But what was the point of those goals if I wasn't being true to myself? Just 2 months before, I'd lived through 9/11 in New York, and I viscerally felt my mortality. I could no longer live with these two parts of me at war with each other. It turned out saying I was gay was simple. Learning to be out was difficult. Drugs and alcohol smoothed the way. I believed they would make the adjustment to my new life easier, making me more comfortable in my own skin. And because I felt relieved from the pressure I'd put on myself by coming out, it didn't matter that I was using them. For a time, it felt like they were working. But even when it felt like they were working, they were not something I was proud of. They were still something I felt I had to hide, especially from the people I loved the most. After my Jewish involvement waxed in high school, it had waned in college, with my primary Jewish connection coming through holiday trips home. And on one of those trips home, when Rabbi Sissenwein asked me and everyone else observing Yom Kippur in our old sanctuary to look inside our checkbooks, I faced the painful fact that the money I was spending on drugs and alcohol didn't represent what I considered to be my values. I had come out, but I was still in the closet. Two parts of me were still at war with each other. Almost eight and a half years ago, I got sober. Recovery taught me about gratitude, resilience, joy. Seemingly unrelated, the year before that, I began getting more involved with UJA Federation, the New York Federation counterpart of Combined Jewish Philanthropies here. I learned about it through lunches and dinners I attended with my law firm, and in my first real act of charitable giving as an adult, I started making an $18 monthly donation to UJA Federation about 10 years ago. Over the last decade, what began as an $18 monthly donation has burgeoned into a return to Judaism that I couldn't have imagined. Through immersive involvement with UJA Federation and my own spiritual home, CBST, the world's largest LGBTQ synagogue, I found a way to bring a measure of peace to the parts of me at war with each other. I found that living my truth, living my full self as a gay Jew, means that I can live with purpose, passion, and focus. Instead of suffering self-hatred from being gay and Jewish, I feel joy from channeling the purpose, passion, and focus that comes from living my full self as a gay Jew towards making a difference in the lives of others. Serving others is what it means for me to live my values, my Jewish values. As my rabbi often says, no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. What can you do? She asks. How can you make a difference in just one person's life? The TBE I return to today is a community that is constantly trying to answer those questions. What can you do? How can you make a difference in just one person's life? A couple of weeks ago, my parents and many of you here at TBE went on a civil rights journey to the American South. I went on the same eye-opening journey led by Edgar 36 in January with National Young Leadership Cabinet, and my synagogue, CBST, went in March. Many of us returned from our journeys inspired to redouble CBST's social justice efforts in the area of racial and socioeconomic justice, concentrating on mass incarceration and building on the reentry work with formerly incarcerated individuals that we began earlier this year. Here at TBE, the journey emerged from your own racial justice initiative, providing a context for the difference you were already making and inspiring you to keep asking, what can we do? How can we make a difference in just one person's life? This week's Torah portion is Toldot, generations. Lador Vador, from generation to generation, doesn't just refer to what is passed down. Rather, it refers to learning and teaching going both ways. We can learn from those who came before us and also teach them. We can teach those who come after us and also learn from them. As my parents and I have each turned to Judaism and our own synagogues more deeply over the past several years, we have learned from and taught each other. Tonight I return here and stand before them and all of you without shame or guilt, because when I look into my checkbook and at how I spend my time, I can say gratefully that they reflect my values. TBE is a place that reflects my values, a place where you've welcomed me back, a place I'm thankful to call home. The same, yet different. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Lee.
I must say it is quite ironic that outside someone found a missing checkbook.
If you're able